The brutal truth about people who fear commitment. They say they want a relationship. They pursue you. They talk about the future. They make you believe you're building something real. And then, the moment it starts to feel solid, the moment vulnerability becomes necessary, the moment real intimacy requires dropping the armor, they disappear. Or they create distance. Or they find a flaw in you that suddenly makes the whole thing impossible. And you're left wondering, what changed? What did I do wrong? The answer is nothing changed. This was always the pattern. Because the person who fears commitment isn't afraid of you specifically. They're afraid of what commitment represents. Being fully known, being vulnerable, losing control, being accountable to someone besides themselves. The Stoics understood that fear, left unexamined, controls your life. Epictetus taught that we're enslaved by whatever we can't face, and commitment phobes are enslaved by their fear of what intimacy demands. Today we're examining the brutal truths about people who fear commitment, not to judge them because this fear usually comes from real wounds, but to understand the pattern clearly, to stop making excuses for it, to recognize it faster, and if you are one, to face what you're actually running from, because the truth is harder than the story they tell themselves, and someone needs to say it. Let's be clear about what we're talking about. Commitment phobia isn't the same as being selective. It's not the same as needing time to build trust. It's not the same as recognizing when someone isn't right for you and ending things. Those are healthy, mature relationship behaviors. Commitment phobia is a pattern, a predictable cycle that repeats regardless of who the partner is. It looks like this. Phase 1, pursuit. They're intensely interested. They pursue hard. They make you feel special, chosen, like you're exactly what they've been looking for. The chemistry is undeniable. The connection feels rare. Phase 2, honeymoon. Everything is perfect. They're engaged, present, affectionate. You start to relax. You start to invest. You start to believe this is real. Phase 3, the shift. Something changes, often subtle at first. They become slightly distant, slightly less available. They start noticing flaws they didn't see before. They become critical or withdrawn. Phase 4, the exit. They end it, or they create such distance that you end it, or they cheat, or they sabotage so thoroughly that the relationship becomes impossible. But one way or another, they escape before real commitment solidifies. Phase 5, the return sometimes. After the relationship ends and distance is reestablished, they might come back. They miss you. They made a mistake. They're ready now until phase 3 repeats. This isn't about one relationship that didn't work. This is a pattern they repeat with multiple people over years or decades. Different partners, same cycle. And here's what makes it particularly difficult. Commitment phobes genuinely believe their own story each time. They really do think this person wasn't right, that the timing was off, that if they just found the right person, it would be different. But it's never different. Because the problem isn't the partner, it's the intimacy itself. Carl Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Commitment phobes are being directed by unconscious fear, and they mistake that fear for genuine incompatibility, for high standards, for protecting their freedom. But what they're actually doing is protecting themselves from vulnerability, and that protection costs them everything they claim to want. Now, where does this fear come from? Usually, early attachment trauma. A parent who was inconsistent, sometimes loving, sometimes abandoning, or a parent who was engulfing, demanding too much, leaving no room for autonomy, or a formative relationship that ended in devastating betrayal or loss. The wound is real. The pain is legitimate. The fear makes sense given their history. But here's the brutal truth they don't want to face. Understanding where the fear comes from doesn't exempt you from the damage it causes, doesn't excuse the pattern, doesn't make it okay to keep hurting people who genuinely care about you. At some point, your trauma becomes your responsibility to address, not your partner's burden to navigate. So let's examine the brutal truths, not to shame anyone struggling with this, because healing is hard, but to stop romanticizing avoidance as freedom or sabotage as discernment or fear as standards. 1. It's not about finding the right person, it's about avoiding being known. The commitment phobe tells themselves they just haven't found the right person yet, someone who checks all the boxes, someone who makes it easy, someone they can be fully themselves with. But here's what actually happens. Whenever someone starts to truly know them, sees their flaws, their wounds, their humanity, the commitment phobe creates distance. Because the real fear isn't being with the wrong person, it's being fully seen by anyone and being found insufficient, being vulnerable and being rejected, being authentic and being abandoned. So they keep their cards hidden. They maintain emotional distance even in intimate relationships. They share the curated version, never the full truth. They let you get close, but never close enough to actually see them. And the moment you do start to see them, the real them, not the performance, they panic. They find reasons you're not right. They focus on your flaws to avoid facing their own fear. Marcus Aurelius understood vulnerability. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. The thing they're avoiding, true intimacy, being fully known, is the very thing that would heal them, but they can't see that because they're too busy protecting themselves from it. This is why they can be with someone for years and still keep them at arm's length emotionally. Why they can say they love you but never let you fully in. Why the relationship always feels like you're on the outside looking in, no matter how long you're together. They're not looking for the right person. They're looking for someone who will love them without requiring them to be vulnerable, which doesn't exist. 2. They're addicted to the chase, not the relationship. Notice when commitment phobes are most engaged, at the beginning, during pursuit, when you're a challenge, when they have to win you over. They're intoxicating during this phase. Intense attention, grand gestures, deep conversations. You feel more alive than you have in years. But that intensity isn't about you. It's about the chase, the conquest, the validation of winning someone over, the dopamine hit of being desired. Once they have you, once you're invested, once you've let your guard down, once pursuit becomes maintenance, the excitement dies. Because the game is over, and they're not interested in what comes after the game, the actual relationship, the steady building, the daily showing up, the vulnerable intimacy that deepens over time. That feels boring compared to the high of new attraction, so they start looking for the next chase, the next person who makes them feel that aliveness, the next validation hit. This is why they often have a pattern of overlapping relationships or quickly moving from one to another. They're chasing a feeling, not building a partnership. Seneca warned about this. To be everywhere is to be nowhere. When you're always chasing the next thing, you never actually arrive anywhere. You never build depth. You collect experiences but create nothing lasting. And they'll tell you they're not ready to settle down or they haven't found the one. But the truth is, they're addicted to the early stage chemicals and unwilling to do the work that comes after. 3. The freedom they're protecting is actually a prison. Ask a commitment phobe why they avoid commitment, and they'll talk about freedom, independence, not wanting to be tied down, keeping their options open, living life on their terms. It sounds noble, empowered, like they know themselves and what they need. But look at what that freedom actually looks like. They can't build anything lasting with anyone. They can't experience the depth that comes from long-term intimacy. They can't be fully known because vulnerability feels too dangerous. They can't trust anyone completely because everyone is temporary. They're alone even when they're with someone. That's not freedom. That's a different kind of cage. They've traded the vulnerability of commitment for the safety of emotional distance. And they've convinced themselves the cage is a kingdom. Epictetus taught, "Nay, no man is free who is not master of himself." The commitment phobe isn't free. They're controlled by fear. Every relationship decision is made from that fear. Every exit is fear-driven. Every sabotage is fear protecting itself. Real freedom would be having the choice to commit or not, based on genuine compatibility and desire, not being compelled to avoid commitment regardless of the situation. They're not choosing freedom. They're trapped in a pattern they can't break, and they're calling it autonomy. 4. They choose unavailable people to validate their fear. Here's a pattern commitment phobes won't admit. They often choose people who are also unavailable, emotionally, physically, situationally. The person who's married, the person who lives across the country, the person who's clearly not over their ex, the person who explicitly doesn't want commitment. And they'll tell you it's just coincidence, just attraction, just bad luck that they keep falling for people they can't actually be with. But it's not coincidence, it's strategy, unconscious but strategic nonetheless. Because if you choose people who can't commit to you, you never have to face your own fear of commitment. You get to play the role of the one who wants more while never having to deliver on it. It's a perfect setup. They get to feel like the victim of others' unavailability while never risking their own. And when someone actually available shows interest, someone healthy, stable, genuinely ready for commitment, they lose interest. They can't explain why. They just don't feel that spark. That person is too nice or too available or not exciting enough. Translation: that person is actually available, which means if things progressed, they'd have to be available too, and that's terrifying. So they stay in situations that validate their narrative. See, people aren't reliable. Commitment doesn't work. I was right to protect myself. 5. They sabotage when things get real. There's a moment in every relationship when it shifts from casual to serious, when we're seeing each other becomes we're together, when hypothetical future becomes concrete plans. That's when the commitment phobe panics and the sabotage begins, often in ways they don't consciously recognize. They pick fights over small things. They suddenly notice deal-breaker flaws they overlooked before. They withdraw emotionally while claiming everything's fine. They create situations that force you to end it. They cheat, sometimes with people they don't even care about. They become critical, distant, unavailable, all designed unconsciously to blow up the relationship before it demands more than they can give. And they'll blame you. You became too needy, too demanding, too serious. You changed. You put pressure on them. But what actually happened is the relationship reached the point where real commitment was necessary, and they couldn't do it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Our life is what our thoughts make it." The commitment phobe's thought is, if I let this get too real, I'll be trapped, hurt, suffocated, abandoned. So they create that outcome themselves. They ensure the relationship fails before they have to fully risk themselves. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. They fear abandonment, so they abandon first. They fear losing themselves, so they push away anyone who might know them. They fear being trapped, so they sabotage anything that might actually work. 6. They're more committed to their fear than to any person. This is the hardest truth to accept, especially if you love someone with commitment issues. They're not going to change for you. Not because you're not good enough, not because you didn't love them right, not because you weren't patient enough, but because they're more committed to protecting themselves than they are to building with you. Their relationship with their fear is the longest, most consistent relationship they can have. It's been there through everything. It's kept them safe. It's familiar. And no matter how much they care about you, no matter how real the connection is, when it comes down to it, they'll choose their fear, because changing would require facing the wounds they've been avoiding, sitting with discomfort instead of running, risking vulnerability instead of maintaining control, tolerating uncertainty instead of maintaining safety, doing therapy, inner work, actually healing, which is terrifying. Most commitment phobes won't do that work, not because they're bad people, but because the fear of facing themselves is greater than their desire for intimacy. So they'll keep repeating the pattern, different partners, same cycle, and they'll genuinely believe each time that the relationship just didn't work out. But the relationship was never the problem. Their relationship with fear was. 7. The pain they avoid creates more pain than what they fear. Here's the ultimate irony of commitment phobia. They avoid commitment to protect themselves from pain, from being hurt, from being abandoned, from being trapped or suffocated. But in avoiding that potential pain, they create guaranteed pain, the pain of loneliness, even when they're with someone, the pain of never being fully known or deeply loved, the pain of looking back at 40, 50, 60, and realizing they've never let anyone truly in, the pain of pattern repetition, hurting people who loved them, the pain of settling for surface-level connections when they crave depth, the pain of knowing they sabotaged every chance at something real, the pain they're running from might happen, the pain they're creating definitely will, and at a certain point, the running itself becomes the prison. The protection becomes the problem. Seneca understood this. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. The fears that drive commitment avoidance are mostly imagined futures, projections of worst-case scenarios that may never happen. But the cost of avoiding those imagined futures is very real, very present suffering. They're trading hypothetical pain for guaranteed emptiness and calling it self-protection. So what do we do with these brutal truths? If you're in a relationship with a commitment phobe, stop making excuses for them. Stop believing that if you're just patient enough, loving enough, understanding enough, they'll change. They won't change until they decide to face what they're running from. And that decision is entirely theirs. Your love can't heal them. Your patience can't fix them. Your understanding can't make them ready. What you can do is set a boundary. I'm building toward commitment. If you can't or won't do the same, I need to know now so I can make informed decisions about my life. And then you honor that boundary. You don't wait indefinitely. You don't accept breadcrumbs while they figure themselves out. You don't settle for the relationship they can offer when it's not the relationship you need. Because here's what the Stoics would tell you. You can't control whether they heal. You can only control whether you participate in their pattern. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You always own the option of having no opinion. There is never any need to get worked up or to trouble your soul about things you can't control. These things are not asking to be judged by you. Leave them alone. Their commitment issues are not yours to solve. Their healing is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to your own life, your own needs, your own future. Love them if you choose, but don't sacrifice yourself to their fear." If you are the commitment phobe, the hardest step is admitting the pattern exists, really admitting it. Not, "I just haven't found the right person," but "I have a pattern of sabotaging intimacy when it gets real." Until you can admit that, nothing changes. You'll keep repeating the cycle, each time believing this relationship is different until you hit the same wall. So get honest. How many relationships have followed this pattern? At what point do you usually start pulling away? What specifically triggers your fear of commitment? What are you actually afraid will happen if you commit fully? What wound from your past are you protecting? These aren't comfortable questions. They require sitting with pain you've been running from, possibly for years or decades. But that's the work, facing what you've been avoiding, understanding where the fear comes from, Learning that vulnerability doesn't destroy you, that intimacy doesn't erase you, that commitment doesn't trap you. It can actually free you from this exhausting pattern. This usually requires professional help, a good therapist who specializes in attachment issues, someone who can help you process the original wounds and develop new patterns. Because here's the truth. You will not spontaneously heal. You will not wake up one day ready for commitment. The fear will not go away on its own. It gets addressed through intentional work, or it controls you forever. The path forward. For the commitment phobe, healing looks like acknowledging the pattern without justification or rationalization, understanding the origin of your attachment fears through therapy or deep self-examination, staying present with discomfort, instead of fleeing when intimacy deepens, communicating your fears to partners instead of creating distance, choosing someone available and actually working through the discomfort instead of finding reasons they're wrong, making a commitment to heal that's stronger than your commitment to self-protection. This doesn't happen overnight. It's years of work, of facing yourself, of staying when you want to run, of being vulnerable when you want to hide. But the alternative is this pattern forever, repeating the cycle, hurting people, being alone, even when you're with someone, looking back on a life of almost relationships and wondering what real intimacy would have felt like. For partners of commitment phobes, stop waiting for them to be ready. They'll be ready when they do the work, which may be never. Stop making yourself smaller to make them comfortable. You're not too much. Their capacity is too limited. Stop believing you can love them into healing. You can't. Only they can do that. Recognize the pattern early and exit before you're too invested. Choose someone who's ready for what you're ready for, who can meet you where you are instead of asking you to wait indefinitely. There are people who've done their healing work, who can commit, who want depth and aren't afraid of it. Find them instead of trying to fix someone who isn't ready. The Stoics teach that we suffer when we try to control what we can't control. You can't control someone else's readiness for intimacy. You can't heal their wounds for them. You can't make them face what they're avoiding. What you can control is your own participation, your own boundaries, your own decisions about what you'll accept and what you won't. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for them and for yourself is to walk away and let them face what they've been running from. Because the truth is, they won't heal until the pain of the pattern becomes greater than the pain of facing themselves. Don't make that process comfortable for them by accepting scraps. Let the consequences be clear. Let them feel the full weight of what their fear costs. That might be what finally motivates change. Or it might not. Either way, you'll have chosen your own healing over their comfort with avoidance. And that's the healthiest choice you can make. Here's your practice. If you recognize the commitment phobe pattern in yourself, schedule a consultation with a therapist who specializes in attachment issues this week. Not next month, not when you're ready, this week. Write down every relationship that followed the pattern. Be honest about your role in how they ended. Then write, "The pain I'm avoiding by running from commitment is," and finish that sentence with brutal honesty. If you're with a commitment phobe, set a timeline. How long are you willing to invest in someone who won't commit to building with you? Write it down, honor it. Stop making excuses for why they're not ready. Listen to their actions, not their words. Ask yourself, am I settling for this relationship out of love or out of fear of being alone? Either way, commitment issues are not romantic. They're not evidence of free-spiritedness or high standards. They're a wound that needs healing. Stop romanticizing the pattern. Face it clearly. Then make the hard choice to heal or to walk away. The Stoics knew suffering comes from avoiding what you need to face. The only way out is through. Stop running. Start facing. Stay focused. Stay grounded. And remember, the quiet work you do today is shaping the strength they'll never see coming.